Welcome back to the Pylon Cam Fantasycast, episode 8. I'm your host, Mike Frisella, and as always, we are going to be talking through running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. To pick up for this week in fantasy football, we are going into week 7 of the NFL season. A lot of teams, even bad teams, still have a lot of value on their squads, and we're seeing a ton of injuries throughout every week. Some star players are going down, and they definitely have replacements who have a lot of value to pick up, particularly looking at the Cleveland Browns. And at the end, we're going to talk about who I think you should trade away and some trade targets to go after this week before week 7 kicks off. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the running backs. At the running back position, we're seeing a lot of injuries to a lot of star players. No surprise, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey are out. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are some of the most recent injuries we're seeing. So let's look at some of the running backs that I picked out for this week. The first ones, or I guess another grouping, is Ernest Johnson and Demetric Felton. So the reason why I put these two on here is because, excuse me, Nick Chubb was ruled out against Arizona with a calf injury, and because of the short week, he'll be out again against the Denver Broncos this Thursday night. So he'll be out, and with him being out, Kareem Hunt should be next in line to step up, but he suffered a pretty intense injury. I don't think any oh god, the throat clearing is happening again. I don't think any reports have came out just yet on what is wrong with Kareem Hunt. I know some people were speculating it was an Achilles injury. Whatever it is, it's like 4 to 7 weeks potentially. It's a long time. He's not going to be around. So if you do have Nick Chubb, I would I'd be a happy camper. And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I don't think I put him on the players to trade for list, just because he would be worth a ton more than I think you would get, or worth, you'd have to give a ton to get him. Just being the circumstances if he's no longer in the committee. But anyway, let's talk about these two guys. So first we have Ernest Johnson. Ernest Johnson got his first game. I think he got his first start, or he came in at some point in the 2020 season where he had about 15 carries for like 100-some yards and a touchdown. And we've seen flashes of Demetric Felton this year when they played the Houston Texans. I think that if you put any running back behind that offensive line, they're going to be productive. So that's why I think I put these two at the top of the list, because this offensive line and this game plan is for running backs. It is for running the ball first. It's built to set up play action for Baker Mayfield. So I would go ahead, if they're still available. They probably aren't, depending on how deep your leagues are. But I would pick up the Ernest Johnson or Demetric Felton, or both. I would probably start to Ernest Johnson, being that he's a veteran and he's been there and he's played before. But I mean, they might play both of them in a lesser caliber of the same role, in that the Ernest Johnson is going to play the Nick Chubb role and Demetric Felton will play the Kareem Hunt role. So we could see both of them this week against Denver. I think the Ernest Johnson probably will carry most of the workload. We don't have any, with most of these players, and we're going to get into it with the latter half of the list, but with most of these players, we have statistical evidence to go off of, and I know analytics aren't everything, but for fantasy, analytics is super helpful for seeing how have these players performed given the opportunity, and what does the opportunity look like for the players they're filling in for. There is a player on the wide receiver list that we're going to talk a lot about with that. But let's go ahead and talk about the next player on this list, Roderick Stevenson. So if you've been following the channel for a while, and if you follow the podcast for a while, you know that I've been very high on Roderick Stevenson I was very high going into this season on Roderick Stevenson. I think that he is I thought he was a very good prospect, and he was probably the best player in the preseason at the running back position. He was incredible. I think he had 5 touchdowns in the preseason, or 4 or 5 touchdowns in only 3 games in the preseason, and he ran all over preseason, and we've seen kind of a lot of developments in this Patriots backfield, and I've brought this up almost every week, but going back a season, I think it was the COVID season when the Patriots were No, it was not the COVID season. It was 2019 when the Patriots were cutting kickers left and right. Like if a kicker came into the game, missed a field goal, the next day cut off the team. The Patriots are kind of doing that again with their running backs. We've seen Ramondre Stevenson played the first game of the season, fumbled, hasn't played again since week 5. It was just a healthy scratch for 3 weeks. Then J.J. Taylor was getting some traction, fumbled out of the roster, not off the team, but he's not playing. Damian Harris is leading the team with fumbles, and his workload has monstrously regressed. The only player on that team that has had a consistent workload is James White, and he's out for the season. So now we're seeing even 31-year-old Brandon Bolden come in and operate as their pass-catching back. But here's why I like Ramondre Stevenson. I'm going to give you some numbers and then potential outlook of why I think he's going to be a valuable asset for your team. So the past 2 weeks, so going back to their game against week 5 against Houston and week 6 against Dallas, Stevenson has played 34% of snaps and 32% of snaps. Brandon Bolden has played 36% of snaps and 18% of snaps. Damian Harris has played 34% of snaps and 50% of snaps. Okay, this is where we're headed with Ramondre Stevenson, right? They're gonna use him as the goal line back. I think him and Damian Harris are gonna go back and forth on the goal line of who's gonna get the carry. And Roderick Stevenson did score his first touchdown week 6 against Dallas. He had 5 rushes or 5 attempts for 23 yards and a touchdown, and he had, most importantly, 3 targets and 3 receptions. So this is where I kind of see this backfield going. They're probably going to lean on Ramondre Stevenson more than Brandon Bolden, being that they invested a 4th-round pick into him and they want to see what they have in him. Brandon Bolden is 31 and is going to be off the team by next year. Damian Harris, I think, has been dealing with some sort of injury. I don't know what it was, but he's been dealing with some sort of, I think it was a calf injury. He's been battling with that calf injury, and if he were to go down, we would see probably it would be a 2-person back, a two personnel backfield between Ramondre Stevenson and Brandon Bolden. And why there is so much more upside for Stevenson if Damian Harris is out of the picture is because they don't use Damian Harris. The Patriots do not use Damian Harris to catch passes. All of those reps go to Brandon Bolden or Ramondre Stevenson. So if anything happens to Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson will probably end up playing 80% of snaps and be a low RB2 in that realm. I think that's his ceiling if anything were to happen with Damian Harris, because Damian Harris isn't out-snapping Stevenson by an incredible amount. He's only playing, 18% more snaps, with Brandon Bolden being in the mix for another 18%. So I like Stevenson. I think he has a bunch of potential right now going into Week 7, especially against the Jets. But I think moving forward, if anything were to happen to Harris, Stevenson's upside is way higher than whatever Damian Harris's would have been, if that makes sense. So we're seeing Damian Harris's upside at Week 1 when everybody thought he was going to be the 3-down back, or a lot of people thought he was going to be a 3-down back, and that just was not the case. If he were to get hurt, Stevenson is the pass-catching back, but he also will take most of the carry reps. That is why there is so much upside with Ramondre Stevenson. I would pick him up for this week if you're shallow at running back. I think he's kind of someone I would pick up in deeper leagues. I think before go to him, I would pick up the Ernest Johnson, Demetri Felton, or the other guys on this list, next two on this list, that would provide more immediate value. But I like Stevenson if you're in a 14-man league, or if you're in a dynasty league, or if you're in just a deep league. I would pick up Stevenson if you could get him off of waivers, because I think his upside, if Damian Harris has been injured all season, so it's not like I'm banking on, there's a what if. No, he's been troubled with multiple injuries, soft tissue injuries. There is a legitimate chance he re-aggravates that. And now that, Sony Michel is off the roster, James White is hurt, J.J. Taylor is not even in the offense, and it's just Damian Harris, Brandon Bolden, and Ramondre Stevenson. Damian Harris goes out, Ramondre Stevenson's workload is going to increase by over 100%. So for that reason, I like Stevenson. Next player on this list, J.D. McKissick. It never really made sense to me why Washington wanted to put all of their eggs in the Antonio Gibson basket, to be completely honest, being that I was someone who actually was very high on Gibson coming into the season. But then when I started to look at the numbers before the season started from 2020, I was like, wow, Gibson only rushed for over 100 yards twice, and that was against the Dallas Cowboys, who had the worst run defense in the NFL in 2020. So I kind of started to back off of Gibson because I kind of started to put two and two together of like, oh crap, this kid might be seriously overrated. But J.D. McKissick, 28-year-old veteran back, has been a proven running back and always is just a very consistent, efficient back in the NFL. And we're starting to see that with his reps on Washington. So here are the past 3 weeks that I'm going to read to you of McKissick's workload compared to Gibson's. So I'll read Gibson's first. 56% of snaps, 55% of snaps, 40% of snaps. And then here are McKissick's. 40% of snaps, 42% of snaps, 60% of snaps. Now, in week 6 against Kansas City, Gibson did get hurt. I'm not sure if he came out of the game fully, but he did get hurt. But let's look at what happened in the game where McKissick played most of the snaps. He had 10 targets, 8 catches for 65 yards, 8 carries for 45 yards, and played 35%. Wait, is that right? No, he played... What the heck is this? I don't know what I'm reading right here. But he only had 8 attempts for 45 yards, but the value is in 10 catches or 10 targets for and 8 catches. I think with Gibson being out, I'm not sure what the timeline looks on Gibson. It says he should be ready to come back. His estimated return, this is from rotowire.com. Estimated return is 10/24. He's undergoing an MRI. Just trying to see if it says anything important. I just think that he's probably going to be out this week, and McKissick's going to be a great streamer for this week specifically. But I think that moving forward, if Washington wants to preserve Gibson, they really need to split this into a 2-back backfield because they've tried this Gibson experiment, and it just has failed all season long. He only has 89 attempts for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he has 119 receiving yards for 1 touchdown. So they're really not seeing what they wanted to see out of Gibson, whereas McKissick has kind of stepped in and is being just as efficient. So in my opinion, if I was Ron Rivera, I'm splitting this into a 2-back backfield because we're going to preserve our young guy in Gibson, and we're going to get as much as we can out of McKissick for as long as we can. The next player on this list is Alex Collins. I know a lot of people wanted to, or a lot of YouTube channels, a lot of Instagram channels, a lot of podcasts, because I kind of, like, when I go through this, I try to get a sense of, like, what everybody's saying and whether I agree with it or disagree with it. I'm still going to give what I think is best. But one thing I really disagree with was a lot of reputable channels, like Fantasy Flock, I think is the name of one of them, was saying that to avoid Alex Collins like the plague, where I think I've had Alex Collins on this list for 2 weeks now. I thought that was really dumb because, especially after last week, being that you had Geno Smith coming in as your QB1, you're obviously going to run the ball more often than not, and Chris Carson is still on IR, so not really sure what everybody was thinking about saying to avoid Alex Collins because the volume was just clearly there for the taking. And he's done a lot with it. He is on an injury report with a hip and I think glute injury. But Pete Carroll did say today that like he will play this week, so don't worry about that. Not speaking to fantasy, like Pete Carroll is not saying don't worry about it. I'm saying don't worry about it. But in the game against Pittsburgh, this is against Pittsburgh, who has a great run defense, and Pittsburgh is healthy. So this is their premier run-stopping defense. Alex Collins had 20 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown. And he rushed inside the 20 6 times, and inside the 10 4 times, and inside the 5 3 times. They're feeding him in the red zone. Like, no, I'm not trying to knock Geno Smith, but if you want to win games and stay competitive, give it to the running back inside the red zone, at least for the first few downs. So I think a lot of people just overthink the obvious in a lot of this stuff. Like, telling people to avoid Alex Collins was very dumb in my opinion because, like, it would be different. I'll say this, and this is to kind of just to give those people. I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm just saying I'm trying to understand their thought process. It would make sense to say avoid Alex Collins if Russell Wilson was still playing. But to say to avoid Alex Collins after Russell Wilson got hurt was very not smart. And that was trying to be cute. Sometimes we like, as people, like, I do this myself. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but like, we try to be cute and like think 3 steps ahead instead of just looking 1 step ahead of what is coming. So I think, like, because if they're right, then like they look that much smarter. But sometimes just take what's in front of you and go with that. And then the last player on this list, I don't have any stats for you, but Marlon Mack. The reason why Marlon Mack, I think Alex Collins and Marlon Mack have been on this list for the past 2 weeks, because Marlon Mack, while I put him back on the list, despite him not doing anything right now, I have him on the list because he will get traded before the deadline. And if he went to, like, I always forget to think through this part of this segment, but and what I mean by think through it is, like, where will he land? He's going to get traded. And if he were to get traded to, like, for instance, actually, this is a really good spot that I just thought of off the top of my head. The Baltimore Ravens. Besides Latavius Murray, he would probably be the best back there, being that Le'Veon Bell is washed. I know he had a touchdown. Devontae Freeman is washed. I know he had a touchdown. But Marlon Mack would cut their workload basically out of the picture. And it would be Latavius Murray and Marlon Mack. Another spot where he could land is the Kansas City Chiefs. They have Darrell Williams, and they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is still on injured reserve, I think, for a few more weeks. I think 2 more weeks. But the Chiefs have expressed interest in Marlon Mack. I'm trying to think of if anybody else needs a running back. I know there's probably some of you listening to this that are screaming at me like, this team. Trying to think. The Dolphins, actually, that would be a sweet landing spot if the Dolphins got him, because they're running a committee right now, and Myles Gaskins is terrible. If you follow this channel, you know I don't like Myles Gaskins. I never liked Myles Gaskins for this season because it was very clear to us that they were going to be operating as a committee. If you watch preseason with Malcolm Brown getting a ton of reps, and they have Salvin Ahmed, I think is his name, Ahmed, who is just there. I mean, he just takes reps away. But we'll see. I think there is value in Gaskins in that he just gets targeted a ton. And honestly, the Jets could use him. Like, the Jets can't run the ball as it is, but they just need running backs. If there's anybody else you could think of for Marlon Mack to go to, please leave a comment, because I can't think of a single spot other than those 3. Trying to think of one more sweet landing spot. The Cardinals could use him, kind of. I mean, I guess not really. The Falcons actually could use him because Mike Davis is kind of bad. I also, if you follow this channel, you know I don't believe him. I was not a Mike Davis advocate, and he has been a letdown for a lot of fantasy owners this season. But excuse me, that's all I'm going to talk about for the running backs. I'm going to leave a little reminder that if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. Before we talk about the wide receivers, and if you're listening to this on Spotify, please give us a follow and share it with a friend. It'll help us out a ton and help us get more traction and get this thing going. Anyway, but let's talk about wide receivers. Quick preface, like we do this every week. Again, a lot of wide receivers are streamer options because someone is hurt or because someone got traded or something like that. But wide receiver is a position where your role is a gradual increase over time. You don't just have one game where you pop off and then you're like, oh, you're the guy now. Like, that's not how it works. So a lot of these people are going to be a bit like are viable for 1 week and 1 week only. So let's talk about them. A bunch of these guys you're going to have to trade. 2 of these guys you have to trade for, but I think that you should trade for them. Some of them, well, actually not. Some of them might be on waivers because they've been hurt, or someone was foolish enough to drop them. Like, we've seen crazier things happen. First person on this list is Sterling Shepard. So why I put Sterling Shepard on this list is because the New York Giants breakout star Kadarius Toney has been dealing with an ankle injury the past 2 weeks. So going back to the Dallas game where he had 200 yards, that's where he aggravated his ankle, and then he played against the Rams, had 3 catches for 36 yards, and then re-aggravated his ankle, and now apparently he's supposed to miss time, which is a huge bummer for the Giants because he was supposed to be, like, really good. And I am, as a Gators fan, like, I was super hyped to watch Kadarius Toney play. And I think that, this is going to sound crazy, but I think he was going to make some noise. It's like, I'm not going to say Rookie of the Year because I do think that, Offensive Rookie of the Year, because I do think that, like, that is Jamar Chase's to lose. But I think he would have made some noise in the fact that he probably would have been the rookie wide receiver 2. It probably would have been between him and Bateman for wide receiver 2 and 3. So it stinks that he's going to miss more time. I hope he's back soon. But anyway, with that absence, Sterling Shepard is going to see his normal volume. And, like, just to recap what Sterling Shepard has brought to the table for the 3 weeks he's been healthy. Week 1 against Denver, 9 targets and a touchdown. Week 2 against Washington, 10 targets. And then week 6 against the Rams, 14 targets. So if you're in a PPR league, Sterling Shepard is your guy. He doesn't need to score touchdowns to be relevant because he had 17 points. Sterling Shepard actually was like the wide receiver in the wide receiver top 10 for like the first 3 weeks, and then he got hurt. Daniel Jones relies heavily on Sterling Shepard. He is his favorite target, and it's not even close. And I just think that, the Giants are a team that very often is playing on third down. And Sterling Shepard has openly said that before the season started, he wanted to be the guy for the team on third down, and he has been that guy. He is the guy who gets targeted on third down, whether it's 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 15. So, the next player I want to talk about is Michael Gallup. So Michael Gallup has been hurt since Tampa Bay. I don't remember what his injury was. I'll look it up when we get through this. But Michael Gallup, I think he got hurt in the second quarter. Before that, he was playing 54% of the snaps. So basically, he was playing 100% of the snaps. But I want to talk about who has replaced him and what their workload has looked like. Who as an inferior talent to Michael Gallup versus what we could kind of go from there of what Michael Gallup's workload is going to look like. From what we're seeing with Cedric Wilson. So, Cedric Wilson was the wide receiver 4 for the Dallas Cowboys, and he stepped up to take the workload for Michael Gallup. Since then, he's played 57% of snaps, 39% of snaps, 57% of snaps, 68% of snaps, and 51% of snaps, and the Dallas Cowboys have a bye going into Week 7. So, Michael Gallup, nobody's in a rush to pick up Michael Gallup. That's why I put him on this list, is because he will be back following the bye, I'm pretty sure. But Michael Gallup, let's not forget the talent that Michael Gallup is. And I think that I was a huge Michael Gallup fan his sophomore year where he had 1,000 yards. I was like, this kid is going to be the real deal. I think that he is a very talented receiver, especially with Amari Cooper aligned across from him. He is a legit wide receiver. Then they went out and drafted CeeDee Lamb, and we've kind of seen Michael Gallup fall off. But it's not because of his talent. It's because of how they use him in that system. He's not the guy. They rely heavily on CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, which is fine. But this is... So if you're in a dynasty league, like I've traded for Michael Gallup in a ton of dynasty leagues because this is his last year. And I actually was talking to someone today because he was trying to trade me for him. And the thing is with Michael Gallup where I'm like, I'm not going to trade him this season no matter what because I don't care what he does this season. It's what he does next season. And like a few potential landing spots where he could be the guy, off the top of my head, Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence would be a great fit for him. The New Orleans Saints would be a great fit for him. The Detroit Lions would be a great fit for him. Possibly the Chicago Bears, if they let Allen Robinson walk, that would be a great fit for him. And he is a 1,000-yard receiver as a sophomore. Like he is a very, very good talent. So I still think Michael Gallup could get you 10 fantasy points a week this year, but I'm really talking about for people in dynasty leagues or keeper leagues, go out and get Michael Gallup because where he goes, he will odds are be a wide receiver 1 wherever he goes next year. And if he goes to the Jaguars, we're seeing what Trevor Lawrence is doing with Marvin Jones. We could see what Jared Goff would do, or whoever, if the Lions go out and get a quarterback, which I kind of think they will, unless they just want to wait until next year, which probably isn't a bad option because I'm a believer in, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, with how likely they are to bust. And I don't mean like as a hater, I mean like just the percentages that these kids work out is so low, lower than you would think. Don't rush it. Like, make sure you have your guy. So they could probably ride Goff another year, but a lot of talk about, or I don't know if you missed it. What's his name? Dan Campbell called out Jared Goff, and I don't know how I feel about that as someone like, as a former athlete. Like, I don't know how I feel about my head coach kind of calling me out to the public, saying like I need to step up. I kind of like it in the sense of like I get it. Like, I am the quarterback they just traded for. I do need to step up. But we are not a playoff contending team. We are the Detroit Lions. So, like, kind of like, get off my back. Let us rebuild. And I am your bridge quarterback. I could leave at, like, any point. Or you could bench me. I personally would not do that. But I think Jared Goff is that type of person. I don't think Jared Goff is that type of competitor. I don't know why we're talking about Jared Goff so much right now. But anyway, Michael Gallup, definitely pick him up. He's serviceable for this year. And in Dynasty Leagues, definitely go get him. Definitely go get him. Actually, I have to trade for him in the league. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. Anyway, next player on this list, Donovan Peoples-Jones. So, why I like Donovan Peoples-Jones so much, even though Odell Beckham is back, is because this is Baker Mayfield's favorite target. And I don't know why this is Baker Mayfield's favorite target. It's his favorite target in that Jarvis Landry is not playing. I think actually Jarvis Landry is coming back this week. Hold up. Yeah. He said maybe back Thursday. Again, it's a short week, so he might not be. But we'll see. And in the meantime, I like Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's seen the past 2 weeks, 5.5 targets. He's caught, in the week he saw 6, he caught 5. In the week he saw 5, he caught 4. Both for 170-plus yards in last week against Arizona, who has a very good defense. He had 2 touchdowns. I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to continue to be the guy for Baker Mayfield. This is a weird week for the Cleveland Browns, being that they don't have their 2 most important offensive players, so Baker Mayfield is going to have to throw a ton. So this is a week to stock up on Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think that if you're an Odell Beckham owner, this is the week to start him for sure. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I feel the same way about, but Odell Beckham's not on waiver. So that's why I'm telling you, go out, get Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think Baker Mayfield has a lot of chemistry with him. I don't know why, but we don't care about that. We just care that Baker Mayfield has chemistry with him and likes to throw him the football. So, with that being said, go out and get Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think he's a good pickup this week, especially with Jarvis Landry probably still being out. And Odell Beckham is hurt this week, isn't he? He had that shoulder thing. Let me see. Okay, he's uncertain for Thursday. Again, like if you're wondering where I'm getting these things from, this is rotowire.com. They do a good job of breaking down like a bunch of the analytics I look at, and they have pretty up-to-date player reports. The next part on this list, Jamal Agnew. His name kind of sounds like a Pokemon, but this is a player who, like, again, like we've kind of talked about. If you follow the podcast, I've talked about this a good bit, of the evolution of a wide receiver into becoming a star or having playing time. It starts with special teams. You need to be a good special teamer. And Jamal Agnew has been a fantastic special teamer for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he had a 108-yard touchdown return off kickoff. And he's now playing at wide receiver. And with DJ Chark being out and them still having no idea how to use Laviska Shenault, Jamal Agnew weirdly is seeing a ton of reps. He's played for the past 2 weeks, 64% and 60%. The Jacksonville Jaguars are coming off their first win, going into a bye. Things could change over a bye, but for right now, I'm saying pick up Jamal Agnew because the last 2 games, he's seen 7 targets, week 5 against Tennessee, and 6 targets, week 6 against Miami. So they're trying to get him more and more involved in the offense. And he's put up 10.9 fantasy points of PPR and 12.8 fantasy points of PPR. So they're trying to get him more involved in the offense. I like it. I think that it's a good fit because they just don't know how to use Laviska Shenault. They do know how to use Marvin Jones. And Jamal Agnew is just his role is consistently increasing in the offense. And we're seeing that he came in as a special teamer. He's not a rookie or anything. He's 27. He's 26, I mean. Came in as a special teamer, made do with special teams, and now he's involved in the receiving offense, so like the passing game. So we're seeing Jamal Agnew pick up the slack for DJ Chark and that good stuff. The last pass catcher I think you should go out and get is AJ Green. So AJ Green is returning to this list because in an air raid style offense that the Cardinals run, or operate, I should say, Green has asserted himself as the wide receiver too. And besides DeAndre Hopkins, he is playing the most reps, the most snaps by a large margin. To read them to you, so I'll just go back to the past 3 weeks. DeAndre Hopkins has played 96% of snaps, 92% of snaps, 88% of snaps. AJ Green has played 85% of snaps, 80% of snaps, and 90% of snaps. The next closest is Christian Kirk playing 72% of snaps, 55% of snaps, and 84% of snaps. And then Rondale Moore is playing 43% of snaps, 48% of snaps, 58% of snaps. We're actually seeing his workload increase each week. I think he will overtake Christian Kirk. He's a way better receiver than Christian Kirk is. He does way more with the ball. And just Christian Kirk just runs in a straight line, and Kyler Murray throws as far as he can. Rondale Moore is actually more of a complete receiver, in my opinion. But talking about AJ Green, you could pick. I would say that honorable mention Rondale Moore. He's definitely on waivers. But again, like so this is a weird stat. Every week except for week 5, in which AJ Green saw 2 targets, he has had 6 targets. Week 1 against Tennessee, 6 targets. Week 2 against Minnesota, 6 targets. Week 3 against Jacksonville, 6 targets. Week 4 against the Rams, 6 targets. Week 5 against San Francisco, 2 targets. Week 6 against Cleveland, 6 targets. In which he has 3 touchdowns on the season and 340 yards. He's averaging, he is seeing 17.5% of the team's targets, and his average depth of target is 11.3 yards. So in PPR, he's like 2 yards per catch, which is pretty sick. But those are going to do it for the wide receivers. Going into the tight ends, tight end, it's starting to get dry on waivers, but we're seeing injuries. So like if you're a Dawson Knox owner, he's now out. I think he broke his hand. He's going to miss time. I could look up what the injury was because the report did just come out today. It definitely is a hand injury, but I'm not totally sure. Yeah, broken bone in hand. Yeah, so I actually was wondering if you watched the game last night against the Tennessee Titans. I was sitting there, I was like, why did he throw the ball like that? Because he kind of just like yossed it, like just flicked it, and it looked really, really awkward, and then he didn't play for the rest of the game, and he broke his hand. So that's why he kind of threw it like a little girl. Anyway, let's talk about these some of these players on this list. Starting with number 1, we don't have. Not too many stats on this guy. A lot of these players that are on all 3 lists, either situational, being that the opportunity has presented itself, or we're seeing just a steady increase in workload. That is what I look for in waivers. Number 1 guy, Zach Ertz. If you didn't know, I think 2 weeks ago now at this point, Max Williams, who was their guy, as in Arizona's guy, they really were looking forward to getting him more involved in the offense, is out for the season. I'm not totally sure what his injury was, and it's actually annoying me because his name won't come up. Is it 2 X's? Yep. Max with 2 X's. Okay, tough guy. Yeah, he was placed on the IR. He suffered a major knee injury in week 5. But again, let's look at what he was doing with what volume he had. So through before he got hurt, he was seeing 7 targets, 3 targets, 5 targets, got hurt against San Francisco. Zach Erst is a way better tight end than Max Williams. No offense to him, but he's a veteran tight end. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's going to add an element to this offense, being that he's a better blocker than Max Williams was. He's going to be on the field way more than Max Williams was. He's going to be that locker room guy that the Cardinals need him to be for these young guys. And he's going to add like a huge element to this offense. I'm not saying he's going to go out and become tight end 1, but for real life, like he is going to add an element to the Cardinals. He's going to be on the field. And I think he's gonna be a plug and play starter for fantasy right away. I don't think he'll break out with like 20 points, but I think he will be on the field for at least like 75-80% of snaps immediately because he's such a good blocker. So I would pick up Zach Ertz if he's available. I doubt he's available in any leagues, but he might be. Next player on this list, he's returning player Ricky Seals-Jones. So the first thing I want to say about Ricky Seals-Jones, I'm just going to look at his last 2 weeks, snap percentage played, and this should tell you all you need to know. Against New Orleans, 99% of snaps. Against Kansas City, 100% of snaps. So he's literally on the field every single play, and his targets the past 2 weeks, 9 and 6, in which he had 5 catches and 4 catches, and he had he had a touchdown last week. He is someone who his volume will get him to 10 points if he does not or score a touchdown. So with or without a touchdown, he will score 10 points. I like Ricky Seals-Jones. I think he's a way better athlete than Logan Thomas was or is, but again, there's no timetable for when Logan Thomas is coming back. He's been on IR for 2 weeks. His estimated return is next week, so not this week, not week 7, but week 8. Dealing with a hamstring injury. He is an older guy. He's 30, so this may be a slower recovery, may not be, but Ricky Seals-Jones is like a very good plug-and-play tight end for you if you need a streamer for at least another week. Next player on this list is Hunter Henry. So Hunter Henry, to me, is probably the most valuable tight end on this list because he's seeing the most percentage of team targets of any of the tight ends on this list, and probably amongst tight ends in the NFL, being that how the Patriots offense is structured, being that they don't have a dominant wide receiver 1, and they're very like tight end dependent, being that they have Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. But over the past 3 weeks, Hunter Henry has outsnapped, or basically has identical snaps to Jonnu Smith. But he has outsnapped, for the most part, Jonnu Smith the entire season. We're kind of seeing a slight uptick in Jonnu Smith's snap percentage, but he isn't running nearly as many routes. Hunter Henry has run 133 routes in which he saw 30 targets. Jonnu Smith has run 70% of routes in which he saw 70 routes and saw 25 targets. So Hunter Henry is running way more routes than Jonnu Smith is why I have him above Jonnu Smith despite the close snap percentage. And he's seeing the past 4 weeks, he saw 6 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets, and then 2 targets. But they do target him a good bit in the red zone. He's had a target inside the 20 for the past 4 out of 6 weeks. And he's just 13, 10, or 19, and 10 points in PPR. He's going to get you 10 points pretty much, or close to it, which is what you want out of a waiver wire tight end. So if someone is dropping Hunter Henry, definitely go grab him because his value is enough, especially if like you had Kyle Pitts and he was on a bye, or now you're getting to see like Travis Kelce be on a bye, or TJ Hawkinson be on a bye, Mark Andrews be on a bye. So I would pick up Hunter Henry. He's definitely a good streamable option. I think, especially with how this Patriots offense gets better every week, and Mac Jones is a better quarterback every week, I would definitely pick up Hunter Henry. Another returning player to this list, I think he took a break from being on this list for a week, but CJ Uzoma, he's not seeing a crazy amount of targets, and I personally put him on this list as if like I desperately needed a tight end and who was on waivers. I would pick up CJ Uzoma if none of the guys on this list are available, just because he has been targeted in the red zone pretty frequently. He has 3 touchdowns through 6 weeks. 2 of them came against Jacksonville, but he had another touchdown against Detroit. He is kind of like touchdown or bust. He doesn't see a crazy amount of volume, especially with T. Higgins being back. And they have Tyler Boyd and they have Jamar Chase. But if you desperately need a tight end, I think CJ Uzoma will at least get you like 5 or 6 points. He is pretty touchdown dependent, though, so I'm not going to break the bank to get CJ Uzoma, or he's not going to be my first option off of waivers. But if you needed someone, like, he's definitely there. Last player on this list is Moelly Cox. I love Moelly Cox. I think that he kind of just saved me last year in fantasy. As like last year, I think he was like the tight end 9 for a while, being that he was just catching touchdown after touchdown from Phillip Rivers. But the past 3 weeks he's seen 5 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, but he's had 19 fantasy points in PPR, 8 and 10 points in PPR, and he is playing. The past 3 weeks he played 69% of snaps, 48% of snaps, and 50% of snaps. Another option you could go with is Jack Doyle, but the reason I picked Moelly Cox over Jack Doyle is because Cox is seeing most of the targets in the red zone, whereas Jack Doyle doesn't see that many targets, and he is not running near. Well, hold on. He is seeing a good amount of targets, running a bit more routes than Moelly Cox was or is. But I would still pick Moelly Cox because I think that Moelly Cox just gets targeted more in the passing game and specifically more in the red zone. I don't think Jack Doyle has a single touchdown on the season. Let me double check. But hold up. Yeah, no, Jack Doyle doesn't have a single touchdown. Moelly Cox, if you didn't know, used to play Division I basketball, and they kind of just brought him over and were like, hey, play tight end for us and play football. And now whenever they're in the red zone, they just throw him a jump ball, and he like comes down with it 9 out of 10 times. He is, I think, 6'5". Let me see. Does it have his height and weight? No, it doesn't. I'm pretty sure he's like 6'6", and he played center. So he is a huge player. He's a huge football player, and they love to target him in the red zone. And coming from Philadelphia, Carson Wentz is no stranger to throwing to his tight ends in the red zone. But that's going to do it for all the waiver wire pickups I had for this week. Let's talk about trade candidates. I think that these are players that I would trade away and players that I would trade for just because of, again, circumstances or because their workload is getting much worse or their workload is increasing or circumstances. I know I said that about 3 times, but I think that I'm just trying to move some stuff around on my desk. These are some players that I think that are worth trading for. Some of them you'll have to break the bank for, which I think are totally fine, totally worth it. Some of them you probably could get on a bargain before they pop off, and then some of them I think these are players that you should not have on your team anymore, and you should totally move them off your team. Anyway, here are my players to trade for. Let me move my head. Hold up before I break everything. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put myself right in the middle. So, players I would trade for. First player, we've talked about him quite a bit, so I'm not going to talk about him too much. Michael Gallup. Especially if you're in Dynasty Leagues, I think Michael Gallup has a ton of upside for next season. And he does have a good bit of upside this season. I think that, he was a 1,000-yard receiver with a bad Dak Prescott. Like, Carson Wentz was better than Dak Prescott in Michael Gallup's sophomore year, just to put it into perspective of like what we're looking at and how actually good Michael Gallup is. Also, Michael Gallup always comes up big when the Cowboys need him to. He's always the guy who's making that sideline toe tap catch. He's always the guy who's catching that dagger pass. He just seems to always be in the right place at the right time for the Dallas Cowboys. I love Michael Gallup. I think he's a phenomenal talent. And I think for next year, he is going to be a wide receiver 1 and has the talent to be a wide receiver 1 wherever he goes. I'm kind of hoping he goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that would be a really cool fit for him, especially to play with Trevor Lawrence and see the Jaguars become good. The next player on this list is A.J. Brown. A lot of people are very, very, very upset with A.J. Brown, being that he has sucked all season. and I blame that more on Ryan Tannehill than him. But last night against the Bills, he finally saw his normal share of targets. But I think people need to put respect on Derrick Henry's name and put him in the MVP conversation. I think he is more of an MVP candidate than anybody besides like Kyler Murray at this point. What he's doing is insane. He has over 750 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns in 6 weeks of play. That is crazy. He's on pace for 2,200 touchdowns. That people need to like stop tripping on Derrick Henry because it's kind of getting ridiculous at this point. MVP should not be a quarterback exclusive talent. Not a quarterback exclusive title or award, because if you take Derrick Henry off of the Titans, how many wins do they have? They're missing 10 touchdowns off the bat. So I think you Derrick Henry again, you gotta put respect on his name. Plus, with AJ Brown being on the field and how much teams have to answer for Derrick Henry, he is becoming more open. Julio Jones continues to deal with injuries, so there's that, which is why I think that you should definitely trade for A.J. Brown, because now that he is healthy, he's going to see all of the volume, all of the targets. Pretty much, he's probably going to dominate the team target percentage by a substantial amount. The next player on this list is Calvin Ridley. I think I've had this theory, and I've talked about it quite a bit on this channel or on this podcast. I think Matt Ryan was hurt for the first few weeks, which is why Cordero Patterson was popping off, because that was as far as Matt Ryan could throw without being in pain. And I kind of am starting to think that I was right, being that we're seeing the resurgence of Kyle Pitts, or the assurgence of Kyle Pitts, I should say, because in the game against the Jets, we finally saw Matt Ryan take targets deeper down the field. Unfortunately, Calvin Ridley did not play that game because he was dealing with a personal matter, undisclosed, so whatever that means. But if Matt Ryan starts to step back up to the plate, we're going to see a lot more of Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley is going to be playing at where his ADP is. And if your season's not too far gone, Calvin Ridley is going to come to your rescue for a few weeks. Next part of this list I would trade for is Keenan Allen. I know a lot of people are upset with Keenan Allen, being that you probably drafted him at the back end of the top of the fourth or the back end of the third, and Mike Williams is kind of just stealing the show. However, Keenan Allen still gets an incredible amount of targets, and he just needs one touchdown a game to be over 25 points pretty much every week, or over 22 points every week. So I like Keenan Allen. I still think he's a very good receiver. I think Justin Herbert still likes throwing the ball. They've just found a way to have Mike Williams be wide open when they need him to be wide open, or if they need a big play, they go to Mike Williams instead of Keenan Allen. So the volume for Keenan Allen is most definitely there to go ahead and get him and there are plenty of people who are upset with Keenan Allen and will want to trade him. Trust me. I've kind of reached out to some buddies about hey, how do you feel about trading Keenan Allen? They're like, I'm open to it, and then they send me something stupid, so we don't get anything done. But the bottom line is people are willing to trade Keenan Allen. The last player I would trade for on this list is A.J. Green. Again, I think with how many snaps A.J. Green is playing and how little the Cardinals team runs the football, I would go ahead and get A.J. Green. I think his volume is really, really high. I think he has a ton of upside. He's actually catching way more touchdowns than I think anybody expected. And he's playing really well, and I don't think it's anything A.J. Green is bad. I never thought he was bad when he was on the Bengals, but I think he just didn't want to play for the Bengals anymore, kind of like Megatron and the Lions. He was what am I playing for? But now he's on a competitive team, and we're seeing how valuable he still is. I'd go ahead and get A.J. Green. And the Cardinals are doing very well in building a locker room, being that we see this young nucleus of players they have, and they've acquired a veteran for every single position that they need or grouping that they need, in that they went out and got J.J. Watt to help with the defense. They got Zach Ertz to help with the offense, and they already had A.J. Green in the offseason to help with the offense. He's a veteran presence. All these players have playoff experience. Everybody I just named has playoff experience, has AFC championship experience, or divisional championship experience, I should say, or conference championship experience, except A.J. Green. But A.J. Green has played in multiple playoff games. He's a veteran in the league for a long time. I like A.J. Green, and he definitely has a place in this offense that is not going anywhere unless he gets hurt. A.J. Green has been susceptible to injuries in the past. So we'll see. I think until that, hopefully that doesn't happen, he's a very, 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 very good ad, and you could probably buy him pretty low. I think you could trade Julio Jones for AJ Green. You'll be all right. Maybe. Yeah, I think the Cardinals are just a way better team than... you guys could comment about that, if that's a fair trade or not. I'm just saying AJ Green has had tons of weeks where he has had multiple 10-point games, multiple 16-point games, and Julio Jones hasn't even played. So, whatever. Trade away candidates, Myles Gaskin. I think you probably won't get anybody to buy Myles Gaskins. I actually just traded in a Dynasty League Cordero Patterson for Myles Gaskin in a first-round pick. I really just wanted to pick, and then I was going to flip Gaskin. I have a few offers right now to flip Gaskin, but I'm waiting to see if I can get a better one. Trying to work some magic for Joe Mixon. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, but I think you should definitely trade away Myles Gaskin. He's in a committee. His game where he had 30 points, he caught 10 targets, which was insane. And he had 2 receiving touchdowns. That will never happen again. Or if it does happen again, it's going to be one and done. And it's last week, he had 5 against Miami in London, or against Jacksonville in London. He had he had 6 targets. He caught 2, and he rushed the ball 5 times for 4 yards. It was horrible. And he's in a 3-back committee with Malcolm Brown and Saab. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Samid Ahmed, I think is his name. I'm not even sure if that's actually his name. Next player is Mike Davis. I just think I knew Mike Davis was going to struggle this season. I knew Mike Davis was going to somehow have a handcuff who was relevant. I thought it was going to be I'll bring up, I don't remember his name, but he was a big waiver wire pickup for a while. Before the season started, and then they cut him. What was his name? Oh, Quadre Allison. I don't know if you guys remember that name, but I thought Quadre Allison was going to be the guy. I was wrong in that thinking it was Quadre Allison, but I was right in that Cordero Patterson. Someone would have been the guy, so I would trade Mike Davis. You could definitely get something for him. He is a steady 10-point guy, so maybe if you don't want to trade him, if you like him as a flex option. But depending on your running back situation, you could probably pair him with a Julio Jones and get away with murder because of the names. But the next part of this list is Laviska Shenault. So this is someone who I put on this list, but I'm not sure how the end of the season is going to pan out for Shenault, because Shenault is a talent. It's not that I'm worried about his talent at all. He's a phenomenal football player. He had a great rookie season, but Urban Meyer cannot make him work for whatever reason. He's seen 10 targets twice this season, which is very good volume, but most of those targets are at the line of scrimmage, which is very bad, whereas last year we were seeing him kind of in a Mike Williams type role where he was running intermediate routes and deep routes. And they're just not doing that with him this year. I don't know why. I don't know why, if you watch tape of the players you have from last year and you see what works, why are you going to be oh, that worked so well, let me just not do that anymore? That makes so many coaches do that, and it makes no sense. I'm convinced it's an ego thing. But anyway, the next player I have on this list is Julio Jones. I think that Julio Jones' injuries are just not worth it. He's going to give you probably a game or two where he has 20 points, but how many games has he played this season? Let's check, because I actually don't even know. Let's see. Someone has him on the trade block right here. He's played 2 full games. Played 1 full game, week 1, where he had 6 fantasy points. Week 2, he had 18 against Seattle, and then he didn't play against the Jets. He didn't play against Jacksonville. He came out of the game against Indianapolis, and he played against Buffalo. And he's hurt again. So I just don't like dealing with that as a fantasy owner. I would rather have the consistent, I know you're going to play 16 games a week or 16 games a year, and give me points versus, hey, you might explode, but I'm only going to have you for 3 weeks, because I don't like the return on investment there. It just puts you in such a hole in the weeks you don't have them, because you have to scramble to pick someone up or hope someone comes off your bench and plays well. I don't like that. I'm just not a fan of that as a fantasy owner. The last player is Antonio Gibson. I think that, like we mentioned when we were talking about J.D. McKissick, I think the Gibson experiment is over. I think it didn't work, and I think you hurt your player, being that you put him at such risk. And overexposure to workload. That's why Christian McCaffrey is hurt all the time. He just, excuse me, he just, no human can withstand that workload and like not get hurt unless you're Derrick Henry, who is just built in a lab. But Gibson, not built in a lab. Washington, not a good offense. I just think that, when he comes back from injury, the split with him and J.D. McKissick is going to be bigger than anticipated. I was right about the Pollard-Zeke split. Like, it's going to be bigger than anticipated. I think it's going to be the same thing with Gibson. So now you've invested a third-round pick in someone who, like, isn't putting up Nick Chubb numbers, for instance, isn't rushing for 161 yards every week or every once in a while. And I just think that he's not worth it. I think that I would trade him away. Because I think that if Washington is smart, they will do a committee because you're seeing that McKissick can handle just as much as Gibson and be just as efficient as Gibson. So you might as well split them 50-50 and preserve their health, especially with how important of a player Gibson is to the offense. Give him some rest and just work McKissick until he's dead because he's 28 years old and you don't need him after this year. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for the pod. Let me move my head out of the way so I can tell you guys thank you for watching and thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and give us a like, comment, subscribe. Check out our Instagram at @the_Pylon_Cam. We have been popping content off like every single day. So please go check that out. We're going to try to work some videos off of the new content we've been doing. We've been doing rookie power rankings. Each week they get updated. We've been doing weekly takeaways, which is going to get updated. That video has to be recorded. I think it is recorded. Has to be updated or uploaded. And yeah, we have more content coming out this week. We post videos Monday through Friday. And yeah, that's it. Go ahead, check out our social media. It's linked into the description if you're listening on Spotify. It's linked in the description if you're watching on YouTube. It's also above my head if you're watching on YouTube. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace!